Ciaconna was recently announced to be coming in Wuthering Waves patch 2.3, and while her showing in the story wasn't long, it did leave an impression on quite a few people, including me. So I have some thoughts and theories about what her kit might look like. First of all, usually in these speculation videos, I like to talk about what element and what weapon type the character is going to be. Sadly, however, Kuro Games decided to take away my 4 minutes of yapping that I did on the Zani video by just completely spoiling it immediately. Could you not have waited at least one day, Kuro? But sadly that I'm not able to stretch my content out extra long, I'm gonna have to just say it, she is an Aero pistol character, which is nice to see. We haven't seen an Aero 5-star since GN, and we haven't seen a pistol 5-star since Carlotta. And while Carlotta was not that long ago, she was the literal first in her class, so it's time for pistol users to catch up a bit on limited 5-stars. This already gives me a couple of thoughts and theories about what Ciaconna's kit might be looking like. First of all, the fact that she's Aero makes me think she is going to be an Aero Erosion character, and then the fact that she's pistol gives me some thoughts about what her weapon options might be looking like. Static mist. So first of all, let's talk about the basis of Ciaconna being an Aero Erosion character, which is basically guaranteed, let's be completely honest with ourselves here. Aero Erosion was introduced in patch 2.2 with the Aero Rover, but it is essentially useless. We cannot even access Aero Erosion without using both Phoebe and Aero Rover, and that is way too inefficient for building a team. So let's be completely honest here, Ciaconna is going to be applying Aero Erosion, and if you don't think that's the case, then I don't know what to tell you, man. But obviously, there can be way more done with Aero Erosion than just, hey, I apply this effect. Obviously, you gotta do something with it when you're a limited 5-star. And there's 3 routes that I think Kuro Games could be going. First of all, there is the route that I think is going to be the case, which is the pure sub-DPS route, where Ciaconna is just going to be a buffer for a character in the future, or maybe is going to be an option for one we already have. I have a couple of reasons for believing this. The main one that I would like to point out is that the Gusts of Welkin set is a supportive set. And because that was the only one to come out during version 2.2, the chance that Ciaconna is going to be a supportive character is very high. Because what's the point of releasing a supportive set if there's not going to be a support character that you can put it on? You can argue that Gusts of Welkin was meant to be a set for the Aero Rover. After all, the new Forecast Echo has buffs specifically dedicated to the Aero Rover. However, here's my counter-argument. Aero Rover literally cannot apply Aero Erosion in current state. Yep, I don't understand how Kuro made that oversight, but here we are. And I know for a fact that the Aero character Ciaconna is not going to be applying Havoc Bane or Spectra Frazzle. We know she's going to be applying Aero Erosion, so let's not beat around the bush. She's going to be using the Gusts of Welkin set to buff a future Aero DPS or one that we already have. Speaking of which, the one that we already have would have to be GN. He's the only good Aero DPS right now. Meaning that if her Ultra skill looks like Aero damage buffing as well as heavy attack buffing, then she'll be used with GN. Very nice. I do have some problems with this idea, however, being the fact that, well, Kuro themselves has already admitted that they consider GN to be a complete character. So I honestly don't see it as very likely that Ciaconna is going to be a buffer for GN. A pure sub-DPS Ciaconna would most likely be intended for Kartathea, because Kartathea, as we know, is going to be an Aero character. We can already guess this based on the Fleur-de-Lis Echo being on an Aero set, and the fact that it does Aero damage, and let's be honest here, Kartathea is going to be Aero. So getting Ciaconna in patch 2.3 would be preparing for the eventual release of Kartathea later down the line. We know she's coming eventually, so let's not wait too long with releasing her. Alternatively, I could just be entirely wrong, and we get to see a main DPS Ciaconna in the same vein that we have Phoebe. But I'm gonna be so honest with you, I'm not entirely sure about this one. You see, Phoebe already had access to a character who was able to apply Spectra Frazzle from the very beginning, being the Spectra Rover. Meaning that as long as she at least applied it once for the Eternal Radiance set, she was going to be completely fine. However, Aero Rover does not have this privilege, because Aero Rover cannot apply Aero Erosion without another character, Kuro Games, I do not understand the design choice there, but that's just me. So as long as Ciaconna as a main DPS does not apply frequent Aero Erosion, I don't see her being a main DPS unless she doesn't have any Aero Erosion mechanics, which honestly kind of would just confuse me even more because they just introduced Aero Erosion, so if Ciaconna has nothing to do with it, I'm gonna be very confused. So basically the takeaway of this section is I don't think she's gonna be a main DPS, guys. However, what we might see is more of a hybrid character like Phoebe, where there's two modes. You can either choose to main DPS your Ciaconna, or you can choose to sub DPS your Ciaconna. They probably did this with Phoebe because they knew that the Spectrofrazzle DPS they wanted to pair her up with wasn't coming until later, so they wanted to make Phoebe useful until then. And now that Zani is confirmed to be a Spectro character, we can safely assume that Phoebe is going to be supporting Zani in her teams. However, if we get Ciaconna as an Aero Erosion character, we might have to see something similar, because we don't know when the Aero Erosion DPS is going to come out. We know it's most likely going to be Kartathea, but we don't know when she is. So they could choose to make Ciaconna a hybrid character, so that we are able to play Ciaconna just fine before we get the eventual release of Kartathea. Now, let's talk about some of the kit mechanics I would like to see. How would Ciaconna even work? Well, first of all, I think the biggest thing I want to see out of Ciaconna is, because she is a bard, I want to see rhythm mechanics. Kuro is not above making timing-based mechanics, and I think getting a rhythm-based mechanic within Ciaconna's kit would be cool. Kuro Games isn't scared of making their characters a little bit unapproachable to new players. We've seen this with Chang-Li. So let's be completely honest here. It's not entirely out of the question that we get a timing-based mechanic within Ciaconna's kit, and I think that would be really cool. I don't really have many other thoughts or expectations on her, but I think that a timing-based mechanic would just be something that sets Ciaconna apart for quite a while. One thing I do want to say, however, is that I would prefer if they do not lock forte bars or energy regeneration behind the timing. I think it should just be damage that's locked behind the timing, where if you mess it up, you get a lower multiplier, but if you get it perfect, you get a higher multiplier. Now, finally, before I end off this video, I wanted to talk about one possibility for Ciaconna. There is a chance, that is above 0%, that we are going to be receiving Ciaconna for free in patch 2.3. And yes, you heard that right, I think she is going to be a free character, and I have multiple reasons to think this. First of all, 2.3 is the anniversary patch for Wuthering Waves, and knowing Kuro Games, we are not going to be disappointed by the anniversary rewards, as opposed to some other recent gacha games. So Kuro Games most likely is at least going to throw one 5-star our way, and I think it is going to be one of the 2.3 5-stars. They've done it before with Shang Liao. Now, why do I think it's going to be Ciaconna specifically and not Zani? Well, if you're asking that question, you clearly do not know how popular Zani is. Zani would just be earning them more money, so they probably want to make sure she stays limited. Ciaconna, however, she barely had any screen time in the story, and people already like her, so they can still make her free without it looking like a massive disappointment. Additionally, because Aero Rover is physically incapable of applying Aero Erosion on their own without a supportive character to apply a different DOT, we're going to need someone to apply Aero Erosion for the eventual Kartathea. So why not give us a free Ciaconna now, just so we already have that support in our back pocket, just so no one will be like, oh, I can't pull for Kartathea, I don't have her support. They will lose money on the Ciaconna banner, but it will eventually be made up by the amount of people that are pulling Kartathea now that they have her best-in-slot team. But that's just my opinion. What do you think Ciaconna is going to do? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps out a lot. If you have any questions, be sure to join my Discord. It's linked in the description. I'm pretty active in there, so any question you'll ask, there's a pretty good chance I'll respond to it. Also, I stream every Saturday at 2 PM Central European Summer Time, so make sure to turn on notifications if you want to be there. But that'll be it from me. Peace.